This is May Pang, and you're listening to Everything Fab Four on Salon.com.
Welcome to Everything Fab Four, a podcast focused on fun and intelligent stories about the Beatles. I'm your host, Ken Womack, music culture columnist for Salon.com and a Beatles scholar and historian. No other band, or popular phenomenon for that matter, has enjoyed the global impact the Beatles have and continue to have more than 50 years later. They are part of our human fabric. They created music that continues to bring people together, and just about everyone has their own Beatles story to tell, some that are surprisingly deep and unexpected. This show seeks to draw those stories out in interesting and insightful ways. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.
We said, what? It's not released for another week or 10 days. He said, I've got the album. So obviously something had fallen off the back of a truck, a few Sgt. Peppers. We actually got that album that day, the one that I still have to this moment. And we couldn't get in the car quick enough. We drove back to Mary's parents' place, and we sat on the floor, put Sgt. Pepper on, and just kept turning it over and over and over.
Today's guest is celebrated English guitarist, singer, and songwriter Peter Frampton. Born in April 1950, Frampton was a musical prodigy, teaching himself to play the guitar at age 7. Within the next few years, he mastered complex jazz, blues, and rock riffs. His early influences were Cliff Richard and the Shadows, American rockers Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran. Meanwhile, his father introduced him to the recordings of jazz guitarist Django Reinhardt. Frampton spent his preteen years performing with bands like the Little Ravens, the True Beats, and George and the Dragons, a group that included fellow up-and-coming musician David Bowie. In 1967, under the mentorship of the Rolling Stones' Bill Wyman, the teenage Frampton became the lead guitarist and singer for the pop group The Herd, and achieved the adoration of teenage fans with hit singles like From the Underworld and I Don't Want Our Loving to Die. After a stint with the blues-based rock band Humble Pie, Frampton decided to strike out on his own. The popularity of his first 3 solo albums, coupled with Frampton's captivating live performances, culminated in the 1976 live double recording, Frampton Comes Alive, which sold more than 10 million copies. The LP held the notable distinction of being the best-selling live rock album in history, while the singles Baby I Love Your Way, Do You Feel Like I Do, and Show Me the Way dominated the American charts. Considered the crowning achievement of Frampton's career, the album influenced both Billboard and Rolling Stone magazine to name him Artist of the Year. Welcome, Peter Frampton. I wonder if we could start out by going back in time, and I know a lot of our listeners will be very interested in learning the very first moment when you got that musical bug.
It was people like seeing people on English TV like Lonnie Donegan, and then, the Shadows, Cliff Richard, Adam Faith, Billy Fury, all these English rockers and skiffle people. And that's when I first started to get interested. And it wasn't very long before we got our first record player when I was very young. And my father brought home, the first 2 albums I remember we had was the Shadows album with Hank Marvin, the lead guitarist, who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Hank Marvin. And then the other album, that was for me. And then the other album that my mom and dad loved, which I hated to start with, was Hot Club de France with Stéphane Grappelli and Django Reinhardt. And when I'd finished playing the Shadows record, and then my dad I couldn't get out of the room quick enough before he put on the Hot Club de France, Django Reinhardt. And I can't believe I even thought that back then. But gradually, this was like a weekend occurrence every weekend. So we'd have a listening session. Dad would listen to the Shadows, and I wouldn't listen to Django Reinhardt. And then, as I was leaving the room to go upstairs to play more guitar, one day I heard this run that Django Reinhardt did from the open E string, low E, all the way to the end of the frets and higher on the very high E. And I just gulped and said, I think I should listen to this guy. So from then on, it's been a combination of, Django Reinhardt and Hank Marvin started off my venture, basically my adventure.
And what was your first guitar? What guitar were you running upstairs to play during your escapes from Django, which of course...
Well, the first guitar I got when I was 8 was, it was a no-name, I don't know where my dad got it, but it was the cheapest steel string acoustic probably. And then he got himself a gut string one for classical style, and because he was a bit of a player too. And so that was it. It never had a name. It was called a plectrum guitar. So,
So your father then, being a player himself is really maybe your first key influence.
Well, yes, it was a combination of him and his mother, my grandmother, Nana. And we went up to the attic to get down the suitcases one year when I was probably 7 at the time, and we were going on our 2-week summer holidays vacation, and I went up into the attic, which was fun with my dad, and looking at all the stuff around there, and I said, "What's this?" And it was a little tiny black leather case, and he said, "Oh, Nana gave that to me. It's her banjolele. It's a banjo-shaped ukulele." And so I said, "Well, can we have a look?" And so we're sitting in the attic, and then my dad sings me "Michael Row the Boat" on it with it. And I think that was more than anyone else, all these other musicians that I was listening to on the radio and bands and stuff. That was it. When my dad played that for me, I thought, because he was, to digress, he was an incredible artist, a teacher, and did his own designs and everything, and works. And so, but I thought I could never be as good as him because he was the best. So you can't beat the best. So when he played whatever it was, "Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley," or "Michael Row the Boat," I instantly thought, I can do this, and I'll do it better than Dad. So it was that challenge that he put down. He didn't realize that he was putting a challenge down. He was just trying to interest me in music and playing an instrument. Well, I got that. I got the memo.
I love this story because there are so many wonderful instances where there's a supporting parent, right? A supportive parent who is back there, whether a kid wants to be a writer and they take them to the library, or in this wonderful story you just told, even more so than the stories of, the kid who's the rebel and has to play the guitar,
Right.
like Lennon and his aunt, right? So that's just beautiful. Why do you, and this is a big, clumsy question, I apologize, but I've been thinking about it, and I'm sure you have too. Why is it that we get to the late 50s, the 1950s, and England becomes this this almost quiet proving ground for what's going to happen to popular music in the 1960s. What is it? Obviously we have American rock and roll and rhythm and blues, and all of those great influences have been churning now for a couple of decades and influencing folks on your end. But why is it that England then, whom my British friends constantly remind me is just a small island, right? Why is it that it becomes this kind of hotbed for what's going to happen in the 60s?
Well, I have a theory about this. First of all, you mentioned the main attraction to music was the American music, that we couldn't get enough of it. Elvis and blues and jazz and everything that was going on in the mid '50s. But I think that. I was born in 1950, so I was born 4 years after the Pacific War had finished, but 4 years after the European war had been won by the Allies, and that I think those two, First and Second World Wars, just completely changed the outlook of the way people lived in England. I can only speak of England because that's where I was brought up. But I think that when my mother and father finished their work, my dad was a lieutenant in the artillery and fought in every major battle in the Second World War. My mother working for the Americans. And I think that they were so glad and happy, I think in general, I'm talking about England, that those who came back. And there was a change. We were in the tail end. My grandparents were Victorian to the hilt, ish. So of, children should be seen and not heard. Well, I think that because my parents had been, and the country, the world, had been through this incredible period of not knowing whether they were going to survive or not. When we actually everyone did come back that survived, there was a different outlook on life. And they wanted for their children, they felt like, well, this is me putting words in their mouths, but they felt that we have fought this war, we've got rid of Nazism and isolationism, and our children. I want for our children more than we had. I don't want a war. I don't want them to have to. And I think that what happened at that point, we were given a lot more freedom as children in that era. We weren't. I wasn't sent off to boarding school or anything like that. I mean, it was an incredible period of peace and rebuilding. And I think that the children of the baby boomers, especially in England, found themselves to be freer. Not that we knew it, but we were allowed to do things. I was anyway allowed to do things that maybe my parents weren't allowed to do. So there's all sorts of stories there too. But I think that because of that. And because England is such a small smorgasbord of talent, but a lot of talent. I mean, it's a small place, but there's just so much. There was so much talent waiting to be tapped. I think that's why. I was in a band when I was 10. So and I wasn't the first. I was kind of halfway through the first generation of guys in bands, in England. And, whereas, David Bowie was my buddy was like 3 or 4 years older than me. And he was more influenced by Elvis than I was, because I wasn't really old enough to appreciate him when he first started. But I think that's why there was so much creativity allowed, probably for the first time, that amount in such young people en masse. obviously there's always been and always going to be breakout talent that are prodigies by the time they're four, but this was en masse. I think that it was a different, if it's a different time, it was the beginning of a new era at that point.
And you were born almost at the most perfect time during that generation, because a lot of the folks who would become your contemporaries were born in the early 1940s. And here you are coming up, so you're kind of just slightly young enough to interact with two different age groups: the ones who were slightly older than you, the John, Paul, George, and Ringos, and then older folks, right? The younger folks who are going to come along sort of in your wake. It really pigeonholes you in a very interesting place in this whole story.
Yes, I had my heroes already. And a lot of them, because of my creative talent, very young, I got to meet a lot of them. Because, and also, we all live in this small area over there, and so it is a smaller scene, but you're more able to be on top of what's going on everywhere in the country. So. It was a great period for me, not realizing that I had been born at a particularly great time,
Absolutely. Very beneficial time. And so do you recall the first embers of the Beatles? When did you first hear these guys?
Well, I saw them, I believe it was a show like Thank Your Lucky Stars in England. It was 1962. And they came out with Love Me Do. And I was so taken by the sound of their voices and the musical sound, the instrument sound. And then John Lennon played a harmonica. And it was just it was unique. It was something. This wasn't four guys playing an instrumental anymore, or this wasn't, Cliff Richard singing a song with four guys behind him in suits. This was. Well, they were in suits too, but the Beatles. But this was, and they'd written it themselves. This was self-contained genius as far as I was concerned at that time. And of course, that 1962, no one in America really knew of the Beatles except us, in England. And so I couldn't wait for their next record, and everyone in England felt the same way. It was so different, unique, and attractive. They were pop songs at that time. Very much so, and very much love songs. But they did covers of all this. Their first album was nearly all covers of American music. So that shows you what we'd all been listening to. And whenever the Beatles used to say that they lived up in Liverpool, obviously, and when the ships would come in from cargo ships would come in from New York, the sailors would all bring these blues, jazz, and rock records. Well, not so much, pop rock, whatever it was at the time, and rockabilly almost at that time, and that's how. It wasn't by radio that we heard about all these American acts. It was through the merchant seamen bringing the albums from America, and then all the bands would go and know someone who had brought these albums over and be listening to them and getting inspired by all this great American music.
We'll be back with more from Peter Frampton after these messages. We're back with more from Peter Frampton on Everything Fab Four. One of the hallmarks of the Beatles' story, of course, is the way in which they would outdo themselves. And I understand that a key record for you would be Sergeant Pepper. And is it true that you got an early copy?
I have earlier than a release copy. Yeah, I have. But first of all, I have one of the very first mono copies, and I have also one of the very first stereo copies, both from 1967. And so, no, I don't want to hear what you want to pay for it. I'm not selling. Um, but yes, so my girlfriend, who became my wife, Mary, uh, first wife, and we we would go up to London. Um, we live in South London. We would go up on the weekend to Petticoat Lane, which was a uh, just a street fair, and it was every Sunday. And so we'd go up whenever we felt like it. Well, this time we were just looking. There was a guy there with that had the wooden album boxes with all these albums, like sort of an outdoor record shop, and we're looking through the albums, and he goes, "Would you like? Are you Beatles fans?" We said, "Oh yeah, of course." This is 10 days before the release of Sergeant Pepper, so I said, "Well, I've got the new album." We said, "What? It's not released for another like week or 10 days." He said, "I've got the album." So obviously something had fallen off the back of a truck, a few albums, a few Sergeant Peppers. So we actually got that album that day, the one that I still have to this moment. And we couldn't get in the car quick enough. We drove back to Mary's parents' place, and we sat on the floor, put Sergeant Pepper on, and just kept turning it over and over and over. And her mother kept on coming in to check on us and said, "Do you want anything to eat?" I remember, "You want something to drink?" No, no, uh, uh, we're listening. So we must have listened to it half a dozen times, if not more, both sides. And it was something that um, I, when I first saw them on that first show, I felt it was unique. This was uh, out of this world unique. There were sounds. I'm a very technical. Audio is a big thing for me. I love it. I've always messed with my own records and recorded myself and mixed when I'm not around an incredible engineer like some of the wonderful ones I've worked with. But it was this sound, and it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before. And of course, now we just accept it. Um, but this was done on 4-track recording, not 8-track. This was done on 4-track recording, 4-track to 4-track. They would mix it down to 2 tracks from 4 tracks, open up 2 more tracks, and then they did it again. And they went back to another 4-track to overdub. So uh, it's so incredible how they worked out, and to keep it in stereo, which blew my mind. So technically, it was almost an impossible feat at that time in history or audio history, technological history, but they did it. They did it.
And it will still have that power. I mean, in fact, today, some kid or kids, probably hundreds, if not more, are making that same discovery and thinking, where has this been in my life?
Mm-hmm.
It has that power.
Yes, and of course, I haven't mentioned the songs. The
There are
song,
some there, yeah.
it was obviously uh, the joined together side was. I was just incredible. I still marvel at it, and I still play it. I'm hooking up I've just moved to a new place, and I can't wait to hook um, my turntable up so I can listen to it on vinyl again.
We have an event here we do every month called Record Club, and we bring folks together, and we do something very old fashioned where we play the songs, and we could have a few hundred people there, and we listen together. And one of the greatest moments we had a few years back was listening to A Day in the Life as a group. When you can sort of feel that kind of shared experience. And that song is as wonderful and magnificent as any Shakespeare play, with all of the emotion and the drama. And as you said, the sound and the sonic contours and the audio. It's just, it's still a stunning achievement.
Yeah, it's probably my all-time favorite from track from that album. Even though it's hard to say that, but I mean, if I had to pick one, that would be it. Only it was technologically incredible. The they made the London Symphony players play sort of stuff that they'd never played before, probably, and it just was finding going somewhere that no man had gone before, and no artist had gone before anyway. And they broke barriers, and especially in that song. Then they did it with "I Am the Walrus," and they went further, later. But yeah, it's just pretty incredible. I remember them saying that they would never, when they used a piano, they would never have the same piano sound on any record. They would try to make it sound different. They'd speed it up, they'd slow it down, they'd make it very toppy, they'd flange it. They do all sorts of stuff, but they never would record a piano or anything really the same way, because they were trying to break through, and break through barriers that had been there for so long.
In a lot of ways, recording artistry to me seems like exercises, particularly during that period, but maybe even today, and you would know better than most, exercises in problem solving. You have an idea in your head, like A Day in the Life. You
Right.
have to work inside the existing technology. You want to try to reproduce that sound. And even today, I would assume you still have to build workarounds to capture the music in your head.
Yes, you do. And like I always said, I mean, technology is wonderful to help you, but you have to have a great song to start with that you're going to record. Um, you know, that's why, I don't ever record anything unless I can either sit at a piano or play guitar and voice. And if it stands up with one instrument and one voice, and I still like it, and then that's the way. Then you know that you've got a great song. All this technology can't make a bad song into a good one. So it's if you've got the song and you've got it in your head and you've made a little demo of it, maybe, even if it's just you and an acoustic, you have a game plan that you work out. It's much easier these days. I mean, you can record on an iPad, an iPhone, whatever. You can make and records have been made that way. So anybody with um, any technological prowess, even just a little, they make it so easy now to record. Can do can do marvels with the technology today.
But you still got to have the talent, right? As I was, my wife and I saw Depeche Mode when they were still a threesome a few years ago in the city during an interview, and Dave Gahan said one of the reasons they played keyboards was the guitar is difficult to do really, really well, and that was a challenge they had to overcome in making their start. So here you are. You've been in humble pie, making great rock and roll. You're transitioning toward a solo career. I want to take you back, if you will, for a moment to running into George Harrison during the making of the Doris Troy LP for Apple. Um,
Yes.
that was an important brush, right?
Oh, yes. I had yet to meet a Beatle at this point. and didn't expect to meet one that day either. So yes, my dear friend Terry Doran, who actually is the man from the motor trade. He's meant that's who Paul's talking about in there. He was first of all he was John Lennon's assistant, and then he moved to being George's assistant, and so everyone knew Terry. He was a lovely man, and we've lost him. Rest in peace. And so my wife and I well, girlfriend Mary and I would go up to town and hang out. And this time I went up and I believe I was on my own and just met with Terry, and he said at a pub, and he said, "You on Wardour Street?" And he said, um, do you want to come and meet George?" And he actually used his code name, and it slipped my mind right now. But anyway, so I said, "George who?" And he said, "Harrison." I said, "Are you kidding me?" "Yes, of course I would love to meet him." He said, "Well, he's recording at Trident," which was literally half a block down the road from where we were. And so Terry had taken George to the studio, dropped him off, and then we met in the pub, you know. And so we're walking down. I'd been to Trident before, and we walked in the control room, which is upstairs, and George was behind the console, and he just looked up and said, "Hello, Pete." And I thought, well, how does he know who I am?
Well, he is the mystical one.
Yeah. But I've been in the Herd and Humble Pie, so you don't even think that a Beatle might know who you are, you know. So anyway, so then we start talking, and I'm shivering. I'm like beside myself, literally, and this is such an awesome experience. And so he goes, "Do you want to play?" So I said, "Now?" He said, "Yeah." So he takes me down, and I said, "Yeah." So he takes me down in the studio, and they've just finished writing a song, and with Doris, George, and I didn't really notice who was sitting just to the left of me when George gave me one of his famous red Les Paul to play, and it was Stephen Stills, and who then became a great friend. But um, so and George says, "Look, here's the chords," and he plugged me into a little Fender amp, and he said, "Okay, so let's do a run through." So we did a run through, and I'm playing sheepishly rhythm. I'm thinking, well, George is going to play the lead, and I'll just play rhythm. So uh, he stops halfway through the song and he goes, "No, Pete, I want you to play lead." And I thought, you know, all my birthdays and Christmases had come at once, you know, and I couldn't believe it. So, you know, I played all the basic licks, the um, on "Ain't That Cute," which was the first single from Doris's first um, first single from this album, which was George's first production for the Beatles Apple label. Um, so, and then George did a slide thing as well later on. But basically, I'm playing lead guitar all over it. So at the end of the session, um, George said to me, we're doing more sessions. Would you come back? So I ended up playing on I think 6 or 7 tracks on that album, and you know that's where I met Ringo and Klaus Forman and uh, all these incredible players. You know
And you were a featured player on All Things Must Pass.
that there exactly. And then he called me back, and um, George would always call me directly, and he said, "Would you come and play some acoustic with me and Badfinger?" Um, Phil um, Phil Spector is producing, and you know him. He wants 27 of every instrument, you know. So, uh, so yeah, there were two basses, two pianos, two drummers, you name it, and a multitude of us on guitar. So it's me sitting next to George, and then sitting next to Badfinger, three of them anyway.
What a room. And the fellow who took the cover photo for the Doris Troy LP was Mal Evans, who I understand you run into during the Son of Dracula film.
Yes. Um,
What was Mal like?
oh, he was a super guy. I mean, um, yeah, I have fond memories of Mal. He was a gentle giant and a teddy bear, and yeah, I mean, it was like he was as famous as the Beatles. You know what I mean? So, and so yeah, he was a lovely guy, and yeah, I got asked by Ringo to be part of these different bands that were going to be in this. I'd done uh, Son of Schmilson with because of George Nielsen. Harry asked me to come and play on Son of Schmilson, and so I did. And then after we finished that album, then he said, "Well, we're going to make Ringo and I going to make a movie called Son of Dracula or whatever it was called." And he said, "You know, will you be in the band?" I said, "Yeah, of course. I don't mind." So um, he needed one more player, so I got Rick Wills from my band, Frampton's Camel at the time, to come and be a rhythm player. And but he didn't have a guitar. I brought my Les Paul, but he didn't. Rick didn't have a guitar, so we told Mal, um, we don't. We need an extra guitar. See, he said, "Oh well, wait a second." And he goes out to his car, the trunk of his car, and he brings in all these guitar cases, and every time we open one up, we realize these are the Beatles guitars, and uh, and the Rickenbacker, that the black Rickenbacker that John played. When we turned it, that was the one that Rick Wills played. When we looked on the back of the guitar, it had the set list from Candlestick Park.
That must have been staggering.
It was, but you know, these guitars were just laying around. You know, it's like
Well, they were probably in the trunk of Mal's Humber Hawk.
exactly. You know, so it's like, and you know, there was Paul's bass, the fiddle bass, and George's Rickenbackers and Gretches. I mean, it was amazing. You know, the insight we got. But looking at the set list and it was only like 20 minutes, the set.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite amazing. But of course the band on various different, a couple of different locations we filmed in, and one time it was always Klaus on bass, me on guitar, Rick on rhythm. And then one of the filming dates was Keith Moon on drums, and the other time was John Bonham. So it was just the hits keep on coming. You know, it was just so amazing to be involved in this, the center of British rock. You know, at that time.
Well, in that guitar too. I mean, that if that's the Rick 320, the Capri.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that guitar would actually make its progress back to the States with Maypang, who would bring it for John. And according to our friend Jack Douglas, it would be the last guitar John would ever play on the guitar solo for Walking on Thin Ice.
Oh wow.
You know, so the history of that instrument, that's the Ed Sullivan guitar.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and it's sitting in Mal's trunk.
Yeah. We just didn't care. We didn't think that what we had back then was, let alone being a Beatle, but just guitars in general. Um, we would refinish them. And these are like, early 60s guitars, which are now worth thousands,
Not
and,
more.
or many more. Yeah, yeah. So millions, some of these now. And we just had no idea how these guitars would age and become so valuable. I'm very, very lucky that I've been able to uh, you know obtain some of these original 60s and 59s and 60s guitars, because there was something about that era of guitar making and amp making that was just, it hasn't been it hasn't been repeated.
Something about, I guess, the craftsmanship, perhaps. During the same period when you're playing all these wonderful guest spots, of course, your solo career is beginning, and I like to think about those first few albums of yours, which are just marvelous, as a kind of slow burn. There's this kind of slow burn occurring that, of course, explodes toward the middle of the decade with Frampton Comes Alive. What do you think it was about that moment in your career where all of these elements seem, of course, great songs at the core of it really help, but all of these elements come together so fantastically?
Yeah, it's very interesting because there's a studio me and there's a live me, and there's something extra that the audience get out of me when I play live. I think all inhibitions disappear, and I just become the real me, I guess. And that's something that, well, yeah, we can tell it's the real you, but how does that translate to the music on the album? And it does. I can't put my finger on it, other than there is a joy that I have when I play that people actually, you can feel it when you play it, when you play that album.
Yeah, and the song where, and it is the climax of the record in many ways, where I really hear that is "Do You Feel Like We Do?" Because there's an exuberance in your voice that, while I love the version on the original album, it's not there like it is in that live performance. You're almost working on the edge of something
Yes.
as you sing that. And you interact with your marvelous keyboard player, and that it did help. You had a great band working with you.
Yes.
I mean, those guys, they were just locked in with you, but that song really becomes a kind of climax for something.
Yeah, it's. I never realized that writing about a hangover was going to be such a wow, life-changing moment for me. And the song is still. Well, it just won an award. Did you see that?
I did, yes.
for the longest bathroom break, the best bathroom break song for a DJ. And I beat Stairway to Heaven.
Everything Fab Four is presented by Salon.com, the premier news, politics, innovation, and arts website. For more information, visit everythingfab4.com, where you can learn more about our podcast and my latest Beatles-related book, Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans. The Everything Fab Four theme song, Seize the Day, is provided courtesy of Black Rabbit, the high-octane Beatles cover band, an innovative psychedelic rock project from Rockaway Beach, Queens in New York City. Like what you heard today on Everything Fab Four? Be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and recommend the show to your friends. Plus, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EF4 Podcast. Distributed by Salon.com, Everything Fab Four is a Wonderwall production. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.